Jake Morrison stepped off the transport ship and looked up at the massive buildings of the Galactic Military Academy. The structures reached high into the purple sky of Nexus Prime, their silver walls gleaming under the twin suns. He had never seen anything so big in his 19 years of life. Other cadets walked past him and Jake tried not to stare. There were so many different species. Some looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Others had blue skin and extra arms. A few floated in the air without any legs at all. Jake felt very ordinary next to them. "You must be the human," said a voice behind him. Jake turned around to see another cadet about his size. This one had green skin and large black eyes. "Yeah, I'm Jake Morrison from Earth," Jake said, holding out his hand. The alien looked at his hand strangely but did not shake it. "I am Kyle from Verdania. I have heard about humans. You are very new to space travel." "That's right," Jake said, putting his hand down. "Only been out here for about 10 years. Most species have been traveling between stars for thousands of years," Kyle said. "You will find things difficult here." Jake picked up his bag and followed the other cadets toward the main building. He had grown up in Detroit, where things were always difficult. His father had died when Jake was 12, and his mother worked 3 jobs to keep them fed. Jake learned to fight in the streets and underground clubs to earn extra money. He was good at it too, but this was different. This was the most important military school in the galaxy. Only the best warriors from each world got to come here. Jake was the first human ever accepted. Inside the building, hundreds of cadets sat in a huge room. Jake found an empty seat near the back. The other cadets did not seem friendly. Many of them looked at him like he did not belong there. A massive figure walked onto the stage at the front of the room. Jake had never seen anything like it. The creature stood over 8 feet tall with 4 powerful arms. Its skin looked like gray stone and sharp bone spikes grew from its shoulders and elbows. This was General Vextar, a Krathari warrior. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy," General Vextar said in a deep, rumbling voice. "You think you are the best fighters from your worlds. You think you are strong. You are wrong." The general's 4 eyes scanned the room and stopped on Jake. "Some of you come from weak species that have no business in real combat. Today we will see who belongs here and who should go home." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He knew the general was talking about him. "We will begin with combat demonstrations," General Vextar continued. "I will fight some of you myself. This will show everyone the difference between true warriors and pretenders." The cadets moved to a large training area with soft mats on the floor. Weapons hung on the walls, swords, staffs, and other tools Jake did not recognize. General Vextar picked up a long blade with a curved edge. "Who will face me first?" the general asked. No one volunteered. The general smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then I will choose," he said. His eyes found Jake again. "The human. Come forward." Jake's heart started beating faster. Every cadet in the room turned to look at him. He stood up slowly and walked to the center of the mats. "What is your name, human?" General Vextar asked. "Jake Morrison, sir." "Jake Morrison," the general repeated like the name tasted bad. "Do you know why I chose you?" "No, sir. Because humans are weak. Your species has no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. You are here by mistake." The general walked in a circle around Jake. "I will show everyone what happens when weak species try to play with real warriors." Jake said nothing. He had heard words like this before on the streets of Detroit. Usually they came right before a fight. "Pick up a weapon," General Vextar ordered. Jake looked at the wall of weapons. Most were too big or too strange. He picked up a simple metal rod about 3 feet long. "A staff?" The general laughed. "Even your weapon choice shows weakness." The other cadets formed a circle around them. Jake could see excitement in their eyes. They wanted to watch the human get beaten. General Vextar moved fast for such a big creature. His blade whistled through the air where Jake's head had been a second before. Jake rolled to the side and came up with his staff ready. "Good reflexes," the general said, "but not good enough." The general attacked again, using all 4 arms. 2 held the long blade while the other 2 tried to grab Jake. This was supposed to be a training exercise, but Jake could see the general really wanted to hurt him. Jake had learned to read opponents in the underground fights. He could tell when someone was holding back and when they were trying to cause real damage. General Vextar was not holding back. The blade came down hard. Jake blocked it with his staff, but the force drove him to his knees. The general's free hands reached for Jake's throat. "This is what happens to weak species," General Vextar said loud enough for everyone to hear. Jake saw the general's ceremonial dagger hanging from his belt. In the underground clubs, there were no rules when someone tried to kill you. Jake's hand shot out and grabbed the dagger. The general was focused on choking Jake with his upper hands. He did not see the blade coming until it was too late. Jake drove the dagger up under the general's chin with all his strength. The point went through bone and into the alien's brain. General Vextar's 4 eyes went wide with shock. The massive body fell backward and hit the floor with a loud crash. Dark purple blood spread across the mats. The general's head rolled to one side, nearly cut off by the force of Jake's strike. The training room became completely silent. Hundreds of alien cadets stared at the humans standing over their dead instructor. Jake still held the bloody dagger in his hand. He looked around at all the shocked faces. Some showed fear. Others showed anger. A few looked impressed. Jake wiped the blood from the blade and dropped it next to the body. His voice carried clearly through the silent room. "Who's next?" The security officers arrived within minutes. Jake did not resist when they put the metal restraints on his wrists. He had expected this. You could not kill a general and walk away, even if it was self-defense. They put him in a small gray cell deep inside the academy. For 3 days, no one came to see him except the guards who brought food. Jake used the time to think about what had happened. He had acted on instinct when General Vextar tried to kill him, but he knew that might not matter to a galactic court. On the 4th day, a woman in a blue uniform visited him. She was tall with short brown hair and the kind of hard eyes Jake had seen on military people before. "I'm Admiral Kate Sullivan from Earth Defense Command," she said, sitting across from him. "I'm here to help with your case." "Thank you, ma'am," Jake said. "But I think I'm in serious trouble." "You killed the most famous general in the Krathari military," Admiral Sullivan said. "Half the galaxy wants you executed. The other half thinks you're a hero." "I just defended myself." "I believe you, but we need to prove it." She opened a folder and showed him some papers. "The Krathari government has charged you with murder. They say you attacked General Vextar without cause." Jake shook his head. "He was trying to kill me." "Everyone saw it. The security recording shows you grabbing his dagger and stabbing him. It does not show him trying to kill you." Admiral Sullivan leaned forward. "The recording starts right when you took the weapon. Everything before that was somehow erased." "That's convenient," Jake said. "Very convenient. Someone does not want the full truth to come out." The Admiral closed the folder. "We have a good lawyer working on your case. But I want you to know this goes beyond just you now. How this trial ends will affect every human in space." After Admiral Sullivan left, Jake had another visitor. This one was a man about 40 years old with graying hair and kind eyes. "I'm Commander Rick Barnes," the man said. "I taught General Vextar combat tactics 15 years ago." "Did you know him well?" Jake asked. "Well enough to know he was not the honorable warrior everyone thinks he was." Commander Barnes sat down. "I've been looking into his background since your incident. I found some interesting things." "Like what?" "Like 17 dead cadets over the past 5 years. All of them died during training exercises with General Vextar. All of them were from species the Krathari consider inferior." Jake felt his anger rising. He was murdering students? "That's what I think. But proving it will be hard. The Krathari always ruled the deaths as training accidents." Commander Barnes pulled out a small device. "I'm going to keep investigating. If I'm right, you saved the lives of future cadets." The next few days brought more visitors. Reporters from dozens of worlds wanted to interview Jake. Most of them seemed to think he was a dangerous killer. A few asked if he felt bad about ending General Vextar's life. "I feel bad that it came to that," Jake told one reporter. "But I don't feel bad about being alive." The trial date was set for 2 weeks later. Admiral Sullivan explained that it would be held on Nexus Prime with judges from 3 different species. The whole galaxy would be watching. "The prosecutor is Zilmoth, General Vextar's younger brother," she said. "He wants your blood." "What about our lawyer?" "Her name is Morgeth. She's from the Threnody species. They value truth above everything else, even when it hurts their own people." Jake met Morgeth the day before the trial started. She was about 6 feet tall with silver skin and large blue eyes. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music. "I have read all the evidence," she said. "The case against you looks strong. But Commander Barnes has found some things that might help." "The dead cadets?" "Yes. We have proof that 17 young beings died under suspicious circumstances during General Vextar's training sessions. We also have testimony from cadets who say the general liked to hurt students from weaker species." Jake nodded. He definitely wanted to hurt me. The problem is proving he intended to kill you during that demonstration. The prosecutor will say you overreacted to normal combat training. Normal combat training doesn't involve trying to choke someone to death. We need witnesses who saw what really happened before you took the dagger. Most of the cadets are too scared to speak against a Krathari general, even a dead one. That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about the fight with General Vextar. The general had definitely been trying to kill him. Jake had felt the alien's hands crushing his throat. If he had not grabbed that dagger, he would be dead now. But would the judges believe him? Humans were new to the galactic community. Most species still saw them as primitive and violent. This trial might prove them right. The morning of the trial, Admiral Sullivan came to see him one last time. "Whatever happens today, I want you to know that Earth is proud of you," she said. "You stood up to a bully and exposed the truth about what was happening at this academy. I just wanted to survive. Sometimes that's enough to change everything." The guards came to take Jake to the courtroom. As they walked through the halls of the academy, he saw other cadets watching him. Some looked afraid, others looked angry, but a few nodded at him with what looked like respect. The courtroom was huge, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Cameras recorded everything for broadcast to hundreds of worlds. Jake took his seat next to Morgeth and tried to stay calm. Judge Magistrate Quindar, a tall being made of what looked like blue energy, called the court to order. His voice echoed strangely in the room. "We are here to determine the guilt or innocence of Jake Morrison, human, in the death of General Vextar, Krathari," the judge said. "This case will decide whether the accused acted in self-defense or committed murder." Prosecutor Zilmoth stood up. He looked like General Vexitar but smaller, with the same forearms and bone spikes. When he spoke, hatred filled his voice. "My brother was a hero to our people. He trained the finest warriors in the galaxy. This human killed him in cold blood, then threatened other students. I will prove that Jake Morrison is a dangerous killer who has no place in civilized society." Morgeth stood to give her opening statement. Her musical voice carried clearly through the room. General Vextar was indeed a killer, but not the kind of hero his people believe. Over 5 years, 17 cadets died during his training sessions. Jake Morrison was supposed to be number 18. Instead, he fought back and exposed the truth. The trial was about to begin. The first day of the trial focused on the security recording. Prosecutor Zilmoth played the video over and over, showing Jake grabbing General Vexitar's dagger and driving it into the alien's throat. "Look at this human's face," Zilmoth said, pointing at the screen. "Do you see fear? Do you see someone defending himself? No, you see cold calculation. You see a killer at work?" Jake watched himself on the screen. The recording made it look bad, without the earlier part showing General Vextar trying to choke him. It just looked like Jake had suddenly attacked. "This is how humans solve problems," Zilmoth continued, "with violence. With murder, they are too primitive for civilized society." Morgeth stood up when it was her turn. "The prosecutor asks us to judge this case based on incomplete evidence. Where is the rest of the recording? Why does it start exactly when my client took the weapon?" "The recording system had a malfunction," Zilmoth said. "These things happen. How convenient that it malfunctioned at exactly the right moment to hide General Vextar's actions." Judge Quindar made a note on his device. "The court will consider the incomplete nature of the evidence. Proceed with your witnesses." Zilmoth called several Krathari officers who spoke about General Vextar's honor and skill. They painted him as a perfect soldier who would never harm a student unfairly. "General Vextar was the finest warrior I ever knew," said Colonel Morketh. "He was firm with cadets, but only to make them better fighters. He would never try to kill a student." When Morgeth cross-examined the witnesses, she asked about the 17 dead cadets. Most of the officers claimed they knew nothing about any pattern of deaths. 17 cadets died during General Vextar's training over 5 years, Morgeth said to Colonel Morketh. "Did you find this number unusual?" "Combat training is dangerous," the colonel replied. "Sometimes accidents happen. 17 accidents, all involving students from species the Krathari consider weak? I don't know what you're suggesting." On the second day, Morgeth began presenting Jake's defense. She called Commander Rick Barnes to testify about his investigation. "I examined the records of every cadet who died during General Vextar's training," Commander Barnes said. "They all have something in common. They were all from species that ranked low in Krathari military assessments. What does this suggest to you?" Morgeth asked. That General Vextar was systematically eliminating cadets he considered unworthy. Silmoth objected. This is speculation without proof. The pattern speaks for itself, Commander Barnes replied. 17 dead cadets, all from the same type of species, all dying in training with the same instructor. The odds of this being coincidence are practically zero. Morgeth's next witness was Dr. Lisa Hayes, a human doctor who specialized in combat medicine. I examined Jake Morrison after the incident, Dr. Hayes said. He had bruises on his throat consistent with being choked by a much larger opponent. He also had defensive wounds on his arms. Could these injuries have been caused by normal combat training? Morgeth asked. The throat injuries were severe. Someone was definitely trying to crush his windpipe. This goes far beyond training. Silmoth questioned Dr. Hayes aggressively. How do we know the human didn't injure himself to support his story? The bruise patterns match Krathari hand size and grip strength. Jake Morrison could not have created these injuries himself. The third day brought the most important witness. Kyle, the green-skinned cadet who had first spoken to Jake, took the stand. He looked nervous as hundreds of beings stared at him. You were present during the combat demonstration, Morgeth said. What did you see? I saw General Vextar attack Jake Morrison with real force, Kyle said quietly. It was not normal training. The general was trying to hurt him. Can you be more specific? The general used his blade to drive Jake to the ground. Then he put his hands around Jake's throat and started squeezing. Jake's face turned red. I thought the general was going to kill him. Silmoth jumped up. Why didn't you report this before? I was scared, Kyle admitted. Krathari generals have a lot of power. Students who complain about them sometimes have accidents. Are you saying my brother threatened students? I'm saying everyone knew not to make General Vextar angry. More cadets testified over the next 2 days. Most supported Kyle's story. They described a pattern of brutal training sessions where General Vextar seemed to enjoy hurting students from weaker species. A Verdanian cadet named Lixara described watching the general break another student's arm during a demonstration. The general said it was to teach us about real combat, but I think he just liked causing pain. Jake finally took the stand on the 5th day. Morgeth asked him to describe what happened during the demonstration. General Vextar chose me because I was human, Jake said. He made it clear he thought humans were weak and didn't belong at the academy. When we started fighting, he used real force right away. How did you know he was trying to seriously hurt you? I grew up fighting in Detroit. You learned to tell the difference between training and someone trying to put you down for good. The general wasn't holding back. Tell us about the moment you took his dagger. He had me on the ground with his hands around my throat. I couldn't breathe. I knew if I didn't do something fast, I was going to die. Jake looked at the judges. I grabbed the only weapon I could reach. Silmoth cross-examined Jake harshly. You had combat training on Earth. You knew how to kill. I knew how to defend myself. You could have tried to escape instead of killing my brother. There was no escape. He had 4 arms and was twice my size. My only choice was to fight back or die. So you admit you intended to kill him. I intended to survive. The most dramatic moment came when Morgeth called her surprise witness. Fleet Admiral Kesra, the highest-ranking military officer in the galaxy, entered the courtroom. She was a Threnody like Morgeth, but older and carrying herself with tremendous authority. I have been investigating corruption in our military academies for months, Admiral Kesra said. General Vextar was under suspicion for his treatment of cadets from non-dominant species. The courtroom erupted in surprised voices. Judge Quindar had to call for order. We found evidence that General Vextar was part of a larger conspiracy to keep certain species out of military leadership positions. The Admiral continued. He was eliminating promising cadets who might challenge the established order. Silmoth looked stunned. This is impossible. My brother was a loyal officer. Your brother was a murderer, Admiral Kesra said firmly. Jake Morrison stopped him from killing again. On the final day, both lawyers gave their closing arguments. Silmoth still insisted that Jake was a dangerous killer who had murdered a respected general. This human represents everything wrong with his species, Silmoth said. They are violent, unpredictable, and have no respect for authority. If you let him go free, you tell the galaxy that murder is acceptable. Morgeth stood for her final statement. Jake Morrison did what any being has the right to do when their life is threatened. He defended himself against a killer who had already murdered 17 innocent cadets. The real question is not whether Jake is guilty, but how we allowed General Vexitar to commit his crimes for so long. Judge Quindar announced that the court would decide Jake's fate the next morning. That night, Jake sat in his cell wondering what would happen. He had told the truth, but sometimes that wasn't enough. The next morning, the courtroom was packed even tighter than before. Beings from across the galaxy waited to hear the verdict that would shape how they saw humans for generations to come. Judge Quindar's energy form glowed brighter as he prepared to speak.
In the case of Jake Morrison, human, the court finds the defendant not guilty of all charges. The courtroom exploded in noise.
Some beings cheered while others shouted in anger. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court recommends a full investigation into the deaths of cadets under General Vexitar's command. The evidence suggests systematic abuse of authority that demands justice. As the guards removed Jake's restraints, Admiral Sullivan hugged him.
You did it, son.
You're free. Jake looked around at all the faces watching him. Some were happy, others angry. But all of them saw him differently now. He was no longer just a human cadet. He was the being who had stood up to a killer and won. The news of Jake's acquittal spread across the galaxy, faster than light-speed communications could carry it. On hundreds of worlds, beings gathered around viewing screens to hear the verdict. The reactions were as divided as the species themselves. Jake stayed at the Academy for another week while Admiral Sullivan handled the paperwork for his release. During that time, he noticed how different things had become. Cadets who had ignored him before now nodded when they passed him in the halls. Some even stopped to talk. You did something important, said Lixara, the Verdanian cadet who had testified. Many of us were afraid of General Vexitar, but no one had the courage to stand up to him. I didn't plan to stand up to anyone, Jake replied. I just wanted to live. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. Captain Ryan Walsh arrived from Earth 3 days after the trial ended. He was a thin man with sharp eyes who worked for Earth intelligence. We need to talk, Captain Walsh told Jake privately. This case has opened up some very interesting information. They met in a secure room where Captain Walsh showed Jake several data files on his portable computer. While your trial was happening, my people were investigating the larger picture, Captain Walsh said. General Vexitar wasn't working alone. What do you mean? We found communication records between Vexitar and officers from 6 other dominant species. They were coordinating their efforts to eliminate promising cadets from weaker worlds. Jake studied the files. The communications showed a clear pattern of planning and cooperation. They were working together to keep certain species out of military leadership. Exactly. And it goes deeper than just the Academy. We found evidence of similar activities at other military schools, training facilities, and even active duty units. Captain Walsh pulled up another file. Look at this promotion list from the Galactic Defense Force. Over the past 10 years, less than 2% of command positions have gone to officers from species ranked as developing by the dominant powers. That can't be a coincidence. It's not. There's been a systematic effort to maintain the existing power structure by eliminating competition before it can develop. That evening, Ambassador Chen Liu called Jake from Earth. She was an older woman with gray hair who had spent her career building relationships between Earth and other worlds. Your case has given us an opportunity, Ambassador Liu said through the video link. For the first time, dozens of species are questioning the established order. We need to act while we have their attention. What can I do? Jake asked. We're organizing a coalition of worlds that have been marginalized by the dominant species. Your story has become a symbol of resistance to oppression. We'd like you to speak at a gathering next week. Jake felt uncomfortable with the idea. I'm not a politician or a speaker. I'm just a cadet who defended himself. That's exactly why your words will matter. You represent every being who has been told they're not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough to stand with the elite. The gathering took place on Harmony Station, a neutral facility in space that hosted diplomatic meetings. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place. The main assembly hall held representatives from over 40 worlds. When Jake spoke, he kept his words simple and honest. A few weeks ago, I was just a human cadet trying to survive at the Academy. I never wanted to kill anyone or start a revolution, but when someone tried to murder me, I fought back. The audience listened quietly as Jake continued. General Vexitar died because he thought some species were worth less than others. He thought he could kill students from weaker worlds and no one would care. He was wrong. A representative from the Altarian Republic stood up. What you did has inspired our young people. For too long we have accepted second-class status in galactic affairs. Your courage shows us that we don't have to accept oppression. Similar statements came from delegates representing dozens of other worlds. Jake realized that his fight with General Vextar had become something much larger than self-defense. Meanwhile, the investigation into the conspiracy was revealing more shocking information. Fleet Admiral Kesra personally led the inquiry, and her team found evidence of corruption throughout the galactic military structure. We have identified a network of over 200 officers involved in discriminatory practices, Admiral Kesra announced at a press conference. These individuals have systematically prevented qualified beings from advancing based on their species rather than their abilities. The Krathari Empire faced the biggest crisis in its history. Evidence showed that dozens of Krathari officers had participated in the conspiracy. Many Krathari citizens who prided themselves on honor and fair combat were disgusted by the revelations. Caxmore, a respected Krathari philosopher, spoke on behalf of the reform movement within his species. General Vextar and his allies have brought shame upon our people. True strength comes from facing worthy opponents, not murdering the defenseless. The political upheaval reached the highest levels of galactic government. The Galactic Council, which had been dominated by 5 major species for centuries, faced demands for reform from dozens of smaller worlds. Chancellor Vorthak of the hegemony tried to maintain stability. These accusations are based on the actions of a few bad individuals. There is no need for dramatic changes to our governmental structure. But the momentum for change was too strong. Ambassador Liu worked with delegates from the marginalized worlds to propose new legislation that would guarantee fair representation in galactic institutions. For too long, political and military power has been concentrated among a few dominant species, Ambassador Liu said during a council session. The evidence from the Academy investigation shows that this system has led to systematic abuse and discrimination. The proposed reforms included quotas for military leadership positions, oversight committees with diverse membership, and new procedures for investigating discrimination complaints. The dominant species resisted the changes. These quotas will weaken our military by promoting beings based on their species rather than their qualifications, argued General Thisak of the hegemony. The current system already promotes beings based on their species, replied Admiral Kesra. The difference is that it favors the same species that have held power for centuries. Jake found himself caught in the middle of these political battles. Representatives from various factions wanted his support for their positions. Some tried to use his story to promote their own agendas. I never asked to be a symbol, Jake told Captain Walsh during one of their meetings. I just want this to lead to real changes so other cadets don't face what I faced. Change is happening, Captain Walsh assured him. 6 military academies have already fired instructors who were involved in the conspiracy. The Galactic Defense Force is reviewing thousands of personnel files for evidence of discrimination. The changes weren't limited to military institutions. Universities, research facilities, and commercial organizations began examining their own practices for signs of species-based discrimination. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a human scientist working at the Galactic Research Institute, found that her previous applications for advanced positions had been rejected due to coded language that effectively excluded newer species. They never said humans weren't welcome, Dr. Rodriguez explained to a reform committee, but the requirements always included experience or credentials that only beings from established worlds could possess. Similar patterns emerged across galactic society. The conspiracy had been just one part of a larger system designed to maintain existing power structures. As the investigation continued, Jake received a message that surprised him. It came from Zilmoth, the prosecutor who had tried to convict him. I have learned things about my brother that shame me, Zilmoth wrote. The evidence shows he was not the honorable warrior I believed him to be. I formally apologize for my actions during your trial and support the reforms being proposed. The message meant more to Jake than any political victory. It showed that even those who had opposed him could change their minds when faced with the truth. The galactic reform movement reached a turning point when President Maria Santos announced Earth's new role in galactic affairs, humanity. will stand with any species fighting against discrimination and oppression, President Santos declared. We will use our resources to support fair treatment for all beings, regardless of their world of origin or physical capabilities. The announcement committed Earth to providing legal aid, educational support, and diplomatic backing for marginalized species. It was a bold statement from a world that had only recently joined galactic civilization. Jake watched the president's speech from his quarters at the academy. In just a few weeks, everything had changed. His fight for survival had become a catalyst for the most significant political transformation in galactic history. 6 months after the trial, Jake returned to the Galactic Military Academy as a lieutenant and instructor. The place looked the same on the outside, but everything else had changed. General Alex Carter, a human officer with 20 years of combat experience, now commanded the academy. "Welcome back, Lieutenant Morrison," General Carter said as Jake reported for duty. "I hope you're ready for a challenge. We're rebuilding this entire institution from the ground up." The new academy operated under completely different principles. Instead of favoring certain species, instructors evaluated cadets based purely on their individual abilities and potential. Combat training focused on teaching skills rather than demonstrating dominance. Jake's first class included 32 cadets from 18 different species. As he looked at their faces, he remembered his own first day at the academy. But these cadets looked excited rather than afraid. "My name is Lieutenant Jake Morrison," he began. "Some of you might know my story. I'm here to teach you combat techniques and survival skills. But the most important thing I want you to learn is this. Your worth as a warrior has nothing to do with what species you come from." A young Krathari cadet raised her hand. "Lieutenant, my people have always been told we are natural warriors. Are you saying that's not true?" "I'm saying that being born Krathari might give you certain physical advantages," Jake replied. "But courage, intelligence, and determination come from inside. Those qualities exist in every species." The training methods Jake used were based on what he had learned growing up in Detroit. He taught cadets to use their individual strengths rather than trying to copy techniques designed for other body types. "Don't try to fight like a Krathari if you're not one," Jake told a small, quick cadet from Altair. "Use your speed and intelligence. Make your opponent's size work against them." The reforms at the academy were part of larger changes happening throughout galactic society. The Galactic Council had passed the Equality and Service Act, which required fair representation in all military and government positions. Admiral Kate Sullivan, who had been promoted to head the new Office of Military Justice, oversaw the implementation of these changes. "We've identified over 300 officers who were involved in discriminatory practices," Admiral Sullivan reported to the Council. "Some have been dismissed from service, while others are undergoing retraining and disciplinary action." The Krathari Empire underwent the most dramatic transformation. Emperor Caxthul publicly apologized for his government's role in the conspiracy and announced sweeping reforms to Krathari military culture. "For too long, we have confused strength with brutality and honor with domination," the emperor declared. "True warriors protect the weak, not prey upon them." Many Krathari officers supported the changes. Colonel Morketh, who had testified in support of General Vexitar during Jake's trial, visited the academy to observe the new training methods. "I was wrong about your people," Colonel Morketh told Jake after watching a class. "I see now that strength comes in many forms." "Everyone was working with incomplete information," Jake replied. "The important thing is that we're all learning now." The political changes created opportunities for species that had been marginalized for generations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez became the first human director of the Galactic Research Institute. Captain Ryan Walsh was promoted to head of interspecies intelligence coordination. Jake received many offers for promotions and political positions, but he preferred to stay at the academy. "This is where the real change happens," he told Ambassador Liu. "If we can teach the next generation to see past species differences, we can prevent future conflicts." The new training program produced impressive results. Graduation rates increased for cadets from all species, as the discriminatory practices were eliminated. More importantly, the graduates worked together more effectively than previous classes. Lieutenant Kyle, Jake's former classmate who had testified at the trial, returned as an instructor specializing in interspecies communication. The cadets today learned things we never imagined, he told Jake. They see diversity as a strength rather than a problem. Not everyone supported the changes. Some members of the dominant species felt that the reforms went too far and undermined their traditional advantages. General Thysak of the hegemony led a group of officers who opposed the new policies. These quotas and oversight committees are weakening our military, he argued. We should promote the best candidates, not worry about what species they come from. The best candidates were being eliminated because of their species, Admiral Kessera replied. The new system ensures that we actually do promote based on merit. The resistance to reform created some tense moments. A group of conservative officers attempted to organize a boycott of integrated training exercises. The effort failed when most officers refused to participate in actions that would harm military readiness. Jake faced personal challenges as well. Some beings viewed him as a symbol of human aggression and refused to work with him. Others expected him to lead political movements that he had no interest in joining. I'm a soldier and a teacher, Jake said during a media interview. I'm not trying to be a political leader or a symbol of anything except the right to defend yourself. The first graduation ceremony under the new system took place 1 year after Jake's trial. The class included cadets from 26 different species, the most diverse group in Academy history. Jake stood with the other instructors as General Carter addressed the graduates. You represent the future of galactic defense, the general said. You've learned to work together despite your differences. You've proven that unity creates strength. Among the graduates was Zara, the young Krathari cadet from Jake's first class. She had been selected as class leader based on her combination of combat skills and leadership ability. Lieutenant Morrison taught us that our differences make us stronger, Zara said during her graduation speech. A Krathari's strength and Altarian's speed, a human's determination, a Verdanian's intelligence. When we combine these gifts, we become unstoppable. After the ceremony, Jake walked through the academy halls where his confrontation with General Vextar had taken place. The training room had been converted into a memorial honoring all the cadets who had died under the old system. Admiral Sullivan joined him at the memorial. Do you ever regret what happened that day? She asked. I regret that it was necessary, Jake replied, but I don't regret surviving or fighting back. Your actions that day saved more lives than just your own, Jake nodded. I know. That's what makes it worthwhile. The changes continued to spread throughout galactic society. Universities opened their advanced programs to students from all species. Research institutions began collaborative projects that brought together diverse teams of scientists. Commercial organizations discovered that diverse workforces were more creative and effective. President Santos visited the academy for the second anniversary of Jake's trial. She spoke to the cadets about the ongoing transformation of galactic civilization. 2 years ago, many species were told they weren't good enough to stand alongside the galactic elite, President Santos said. Today we know that every species has something valuable to contribute. Jake was promoted to colonel and given command of the first integrated special forces unit in galactic history. The team included elite warriors from 12 different species, all working together toward common goals. Our diversity is our greatest weapon, Jake told his new unit during their first briefing. Each of you brings unique skills and perspectives. When we combine them, we can accomplish things that no single species could do alone. The Special Forces unit's first mission involved rescuing hostages from a criminal organization that had been exploiting the old discriminatory practices. The criminals had assumed that security forces would ignore crimes against beings from marginalized species. They were wrong. The integrated team used their diverse abilities to locate and free the hostages without any casualties. The successful mission demonstrated the effectiveness of the new cooperative approach. As Jake looked at his team after the mission, he thought about how far everything had come. The phrase, "Who's next?" had originally been spoken in a moment of adrenaline and defiance. Now it had become a rallying cry for anyone fighting against oppression and discrimination. But for Jake, the real satisfaction came from the small moments. When he saw cadets from different species working together as natural partners, when former enemies became trusted friends, when young beings grew up believing that their worth was determined by their character rather than their biology. The galaxy was still changing, still growing, still learning. There were setbacks and challenges, Moments when old prejudices surfaced and new conflicts arose, but the foundation had been laid for a more just and equal society. And it had all started with one human cadet who refused to accept that his life was worth less than anyone else's. Jake Morrison had asked, "Who's next?" In a moment of pure survival instinct, the answer, it turned out, was everyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough, strong enough, or worthy enough to stand with the best. They were all next, and they were ready.